Hello, hello, hello. Shahira, Mark, and see, guys, it's so amazing to have you with me. I think this is actually one of the most unique podcasts I've done yet. So I'm super excited to talk to you both. I'm a big fan of the Gottman Institute and all their research. And one of the big stats that keeps popping out is that your best supporter and the best reason to for success in your career is the partner that you have with you. So as a married couple, this is actually amazing to hear your story and see both of you in operation. It's fantastic. I'm going to go straight into it. Shahira, you start with you. Connect the dots for me please, from your career, from starting to where you are today, because you've been a phenomenal, I've been had the privilege of working with you in my last business as well. So tell us all, how'd you get started?
Sure thing. First of all, thank you, Grace, for having us. We're so delighted to be here, and this is very interesting for both of us to have this opportunity to kind of talk about our careers and just do it as a couple. So we're really excited about that. But I'll do what you said and take a step back and kind of connect the dots of my career, which is really it's not linear at all. It's interesting. So to start, I will start with my education. My first degree was in computer engineering. And I started working kind of in that field. But later I realized that I wanted to do something different. So transitioned to complete my undergrad at the University of Memphis in business administration. But from there, I worked as an executive assistant in clinical research. In this institution, University of Tennessee, back at Methodist in the Transplant Institute. I'm sorry. So that's where my career actually began. But notice I said it was in clinical research, but my education was in business. And as an executive assistant, I was actually in a learning mode, more so trying to continue the business path and utilize my background in computer engineering and business. But my boss at that time, a renowned clinical researcher, scientist, transplant surgeon, and I'll name him. His name is Dr. Osama Gaber. So I worked under him as his executive assistant. But in the midst of me being his executive assistant, he saw something in me as a person that was a little bit more attuned to learn what he was doing, which was research. So he took me under his wing and he taught me more research. So instead of assisting on the secretarial side, excuse me, I was more so learning the research side of things. So here I am, very young at this time, about 19, 20 years old, and I'm learning how to assist him with clinical research. So here's the story. He was in the operating room, and this was back during the time in the 90s where everything was paper based. There was no shooting your grants off via email and doing your manuscripts and uploading them to a system. You had to actually print them out, stay up to midnight, and make 100 copies and mail them in. So, because he was a surgeon, he didn't have time to focus on this particular manuscript. So he says, Shaherah, you've been with me long enough as my assistant. So how about you write it? And it frightened the daylights out of me. So I said, okay, gave it a shot. And he said, when you're done writing it, come into the operating room in the middle of a kidney transplant. So I scrubbed in, went into the operating room, and he said, read it. So I read the manuscript that I wrote for him, and he says, B plus. So you may think that's great, but I was absolutely upset.
Okay.
I wanted an A because I really worked hard on it. But he said that was excellent. You're not a researcher, but you took what I have taught you, and this is what you translated it to. So right there, that ignited something in me, and it made me believe that I could really do this. Now, part two to that is I go back to school for a master's degree. Anyone would think now that you're interested in research or in healthcare, you may go into that field. No, I got a master's in business administration.
Okay.
I didn't believe in myself just yet. I said, who's going to take me seriously as a researcher? Although I had a champion over to the side, but I didn't believe in myself. Nonetheless, got my master's in business administration. Later on, got certified in project management and in clinical research. So my career began from that standpoint. I worked at St. Jude Children's Research Hospital in pharmaceutical sciences, did that for about 9 years. After doing that, I moved over into the life science space, specifically MedTech, and I worked for Medtronic, Stryker, and Smith& and Nephew. And in those capacities, I was the head of clinical and regulatory. So I was responsible for new product introductions, responsible for the clinical research and regulatory. So thereafter, I went back to school, got another degree in biotechnology from Morehouse School of Medicine. So very proud of that. So that brings me here today. And now I have launched my own company, Research Lifecycle Solutions. So after a 20-year career, this company, Research Lifecycle Solutions, it exists to support startups and emerging companies in the life science space in order to get necessary medications, drugs, medical devices to the market. So that's a little bit about me and the dots of how I got to where I am. Long story.
Well, Mark, try follow that.
That happens all the time.
Yeah, I can
Figure
imagine.
out how to follow that. So essentially the same question back for me in terms of, how
Yeah.
I got started. Well, first of all, you made a great comment before we got started, which was about, you know, having the support of your partner or spouse at home in such a way that it actually allows you to be fully focused on your career and what you're encountering out the door. And everything that I say, in terms of my career the last, I don't know, 10 years, if we just take those, has really been, revealed to me that because I don't worry about my home life, I feel supported. I always am ready to come home. I'm always ready to talk to her and see her. I don't have a split personality around when I'm at work. I'm thinking about, well, what's going wrong at home and vice versa. So like having that support that as I'm talking about my career, it's not a mistake or a coincidence that the last 10 years of my career have really kind of taken off, and we've been married for 11 years. So I
Right.
want to say that first. So not starting at the beginning, but kind of starting with her entry into my life. When I met her, I was working at Methodist, and I had just gone into hospital administration. And Methodist is a teaching hospital in Memphis, where we're originally from. So this is around 2012, 2013. And I was running an outpatient center for sickle cell disease and, learning the ropes of hospital administration. I've been in corporate. And the best way for me to tell this story is I had a really good job at the time. I was proud of it. I was a manager. But in the course of doing my job, I ran into a doctor that we were recruiting, and someone told her, and someone on my team told her that I had sickle cell disease. And I don't know how familiar you are with that. And we won't have to get into that in specifics, but it's a chronic illness. She married me with it, thought I was going to have it for the rest of our marriage. Anyway, I am in the middle of that career, and I'm recruiting a doctor. She says, Mark, I heard you had sickle cell. Did you know there's a cure? And I'm like, well, yeah, I run a sickle cell center here. We work with St. Jude, which is where she was at the time. And yes, I do know that we cure kids, but we generally don't cure adults. I know it's a hard thing to do. Long story short, I sent the research on that particular protocol to her. And she looked at it and said it was legit. So when she said it was legit, I went to my doctor and presented it to him. He said it was legit. Long story short, I ended up going to the National Institutes of Health, having a bone marrow transplant from my brother, and being cured of sickle cell. But this is literally the first year that we got married. So I
Wow.
don't think we were married a year before I was in, DC, Maryland area for 4 months straight, no immune system, but it did cure me. Came back, took me probably another 6 to 8 months to recover, went back to work. But my wife was actually running the house, running the kids, doing all of these things, and doing what she just told you
Yeah.
in the middle of me not being any good to anybody but myself at the time. So got cured, went through all of that. And when I tell you, when I went back to work, and I kept working at Methodist, but I started getting promotions one after the other. I got attracted to another career opportunity at Anthem, which is one of the largest healthcare insurers, called Elements now. I was running their Medicaid operations. Then I went from there to DaVita, where I was regional director for Memphis and Arkansas. Then from that, I went to where I am now, with the CEO of National Health. But I tell the story that way because there's no way I would have been able to have that transition without going through that. So that was what was happening in the background as she gave you that story.
Wow. I mean, she's a powerhouse. I know that because I've been on the customer side of working with Shahira from the research lifecycle, and it's just powerful what she was able to power through as well in data and details and everything. And just in 2 weeks, even with the first 2 weeks was just absolutely amazing. So Mark, first of all, it's amazing and statistically married men are the healthiest population along with single women in their 40s. So you're actually proving on multiple statistics on this one. So no surprise that she was impactful on your health as well. But you said you obviously, Mark, you've got a healthcare, experience and massive experience there. When myself and Shahir were talking about, the podcast and the purpose behind it around that gender balance and creating balance. Talk to me a little bit about gender balance in healthcare administration, leadership, and so on, because it's different parts of the world. But tell us about the US in particular.
So I think, to your point, I speak to the U.S. I do think that coming from somebody that's been in hospital administration, been a hospital administrator, and a healthcare operational leader, nurses, and I don't know the exact percentage, but there are more females in nursing than there are males in
Yeah.
the U.S. But the issue that you see is you don't see that reflected from a leadership standpoint. So if you're like in a C-suite or even at the senior director or director level, there are more men than women, at least in my experience. And I think that
Mhm.
pretty much holds true for the whole nation. So there's a dichotomy between those that are actually doing the frontline work and the representation that happens with women from a nursing, MA, clinical standpoint, and then those that are actually, running the hospital. And I think that's a big issue. It's one of those things where, you have to kind of ask yourself why, but I will say this, one of my, big supportive things has been in watching her career, has been saying you really do need to have your leadership representing your workforce.
Mhm.
You can take it any kind of way. You can take it from a gender standpoint. You can take that from an ethnic makeup, however it is. So there is a strong dichotomy between the fact that we do not have enough women in healthcare leadership as reflected by the percentage of women that are actually in the workforce.
And Shahir, we met through the WBL network, which is for women only. It's for women in leadership in the healthcare in particular. What's been your experience there? Because to Mark's point, we don't have enough women in leadership, but yet we have, and both of us are in that network, which is a huge population of leaders. What's the experience? Is it just because they're not at the top, but they're not at the table, but they're working their way up? Is that what you see? And again, what do you see as the barriers to that?
Yeah, I guess I can just say it directly. History, due to historical matters, why we're in this situation. But we are seeing a shift in that. And for programs like WBL, Women's Business Leaders in Healthcare, from my experience, programs like that are invaluable. Case in point, to your point, you and I met through that program. You became one of my customers, and now I'm on the other side of things, and I'm partnering with you a certain way. So that's one instance. But otherwise, we have a program that's board readiness. It's called Board Readiness for Women in Leadership in Healthcare. And to see that shift in seeing women not only reach leadership status in healthcare, but also reach the status of making strategic decisions in the direction of organizations, because this is a program that gets us ready for the boardroom. They're training us how to walk, how to talk, how to present ourselves, and really how to put forward our superpower to make us more attractive. Now, it's pretty unfortunate that we have to have a program to set us up, because we don't see that with men. Maybe there is a program for men, but it's not prominent. This program is pulling together women from all over the U.S. for us to work together, and we have female mentors helping us prep this. But at the same time, they're also teaching us how to have a voice, how to be able to project our voice, how to present that voice without being too soft as a woman, but also not too hard to where we could be misunderstood as, too sensitive or what have you. But that's just the climate there that we're in. But I'm just really excited to see a shift in that happening. And also, we see men supporting us. And I am so honored, so grateful to have my husband by my side, because everything I do, even in terms of starting Research Lifecycle Solutions, coming out of the corporate world, and I'll tell a story that's a bit of a personal touch here. But coming out of the corporate sector, it was very stressful for a woman. I was there. I didn't know my voice. I didn't know how to use my voice. And when I tried to use my voice, I was actually put in a situation that made me even more vulnerable than what I was before I even gave this a shot, right? So without going into too much of the details, honestly, it became very stressful from a mental health standpoint, from a quality of life standpoint. But I was so grateful to have my husband one day tell me, when I just felt completely defeated, right? And he says, you know what? No more. You don't have to do this. Let's chase your dream. Let's be able to set something in place where you're able to practice science the way you want to do it, in terms of being ethical, being responsible, being able to be a powerful leader and really set a tone for what it's supposed to be, without you having to feel like, you're stressed out, it's too much on you, or people aren't listening to you, or what have you, and a lack of recognition, all of those different things. So I will say that started internally within my home, but now I'm actually seeing it out in the workforce, and even through programs like WBL, because we have men to come and talk to us and be a part of our conversations, to say, oh, wow, I see what you all are doing, and how can I be a part of that? Another organization, it's called Stripes, and that's for women in medtech. And we have monthly meetings. During those meetings, men are invited into the room to have those conversations with us, to tell us what has been their thought process, what is changing in your mindset, what could we do to, or they want to hear from us about what could they do to support us to be empowered to be in more leadership positions. So I really think conversations like this is important, to see that, there are men who actually support the growth of women. It doesn't dim their light in order for us to have a seat at the table. But, I think it starts with, being the change you want to see. I appreciate Mark for being the change he wants to see, and I appreciate you for even airing something like this, so that other men can see that, you know what, it's okay. In our home, we both are executives. We both are powerful leaders in our own right. We both are type A personalities. I will go ahead and say that. But there's a way to work this out, and really, really support each other. So that's kind of my take on it.
I love, I mean, the gender balance conversation is absolutely needed. And to your point, it's not about pulling anyone down or challenging, it's about working together. We think different. Our neuroscience is different. We see the world, we operate in the world, we experience the world just differently. And that's where, Mark, you talked to that balance, right? And that getting that people around the table, that diversity of thought, that diversity of experience, that diversity of need, in order to create, a better solution, right? But Mark, what do you see? As you said, we're coming, and I'm coming from some statistics here as well. 60% of graduates coming out of college are female right now. We see women like ourselves doing more and more education. I'm just doing my board exams as well. So we're doing all these courses. I think, as Shaherah, you mentioned it, but I don't think there is a course for that men are all doing to be on boards. It's a bit of more of an easier path. It's like, you decide to be on a board, you go be on a board, right? We're like, let me get my education, let me get motivated, let's give me a mentor, I need a champion. So that there's a number of steps. Mark, what do you think? Because you've been a massive champion.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that, I mean, if you just went from a population standpoint, women make up what, 51% of the world's makeup.
Yeah,
They do not make up 51% leadership, in terms of any of these
not even
organizations.
close, not even
And
close.
we don't live in the same world where things were mandated against women. So there has to be something happening here that makes the work, the road or the flight a little bit more turbulent. It makes the ride more bumpy. It makes you have to take more exits and off ramps and on ramps than others. And to me, I mean, and this is probably a oversimplification, but I don't think anybody right now, if you just kind of think about, where we are as a global culture, American culture, I don't think anybody believes that we're getting it all right as it relates to culture, society, business, all of these things. But then you gotta have to ask yourself, well, who's been in charge up to this point? you know? And if the answer is it's been mostly men, then you really don't even have the evidence, you know, if you were trying to put even research evidence to it to say that we'd be better off with leadership structures that don't reflect the actual makeup of the world or the company or the industry or the society or the city or whatever you want to call it. So sometimes you have to ask the question, well, if we're not where we need to be, and yet we've had a consistent voice and a consistent makeup there, why do we believe that we shouldn't start to even these things out and to make pathways for that like WBL? And that's why, to me, I'm an unabashed, you know, supporter of women in leadership for that reason. Like for no other reason than the change is necessary in what we've already been doing to this point. The other piece to it too is, you know, if you're a man and, you know, we were blended. So I inherited a beautiful daughter, Akiana, when she was 12, roughly 12, right? And as a male, you know, there's this girl dad thing. If you have a daughter and your mindset is so locked that you can't see that the world is a harder place to navigate for your daughter than it may be for a male in terms of those, then to me, it's like you're not making some of the connections that the world that you live in is the one that your daughter is going to inherit. So if that's the case, if I have a wife that's actually working and you want your daughter to be successful at the same time, you have to actually psychoanalyze and say, how do we put them in a position to where their talents and their time and their contributions recognized in such a way that they don't feel like it's an uphill battle the whole time.
Mark, you mentioned that everyone, you guys are awesome. You mentioned that everyone, you know, would see it, but there's still some resistance. So what do you think is the resistance? Because I'd love to say that every man I meet is like you, but they're not. So
Well,
talk to that population for a second.
yeah, you know, I think there's a couple things to that. You know, one of them is just quite frankly marrying the right person, having the right one. Okay, you know, you sometimes you can't get to the value of your teamwork if you're misaligned with the wrong partner. Meaning, there may have been somebody that could never work with my personality style or be my partner, but my wife can. You know what I mean? So, you know, there is something to that, and I wish I had more information as to how do you actually find the right match. But I do think sometimes that not having the right match gets in the way of your ability to actually assess, you know, these are things that are happening from my experience and your experience, and let's figure out how to come to a common ground about that kind of thing. So it's not hard for me to support her because she's been just a perfect match for me. Now, having said that, you know, once you get there and you're kind of out of that, we don't have to worry about our relationship. We're not at a tug of war about us. So if we're not at a tug of war about us, now I can actually pay attention to what's happening in your career. I can kind of step back and observe and say, okay, I see that happening. She's doing the same for me. So, you know, if, you know, speaking to men that have a partner that they want to be with and they're with the right one, something that she's told me is really necessary. We live in a competitive world where when you're at work, you know, kind of competition rules the day. Same thing for her. If you've got a partner, try not to compete with each other. Try to you know, enhance each other. You know, sometimes be the devil's advocate around, okay, well, if you do this, how's that gonna work? But I guess my point would be you gotta really, really learn that you're not in competition for each other. You also gotta learn that it's not 50-50, it's 100-100. You know, if it's 50-50, you left 50% of yourself behind for that person not to be able to engage. So it's that kind of thing, and that's kind of on the relationship spectrum. But on the other side of it, you know, I would also challenge men to realize, you know, name the five most important people in your life. And while there are going to be exceptions to that, probably three, no less than three are going to be women. You know, so the majority of the important people in your life are likely to be women. So if that's true for you, you got to model that in how you relate to your partner, your spouse. You got to model it in how you relate to your work. So if you just got to sometimes start making the connections. For me, it's like my mom, her, my grandmother's a tie, and then my dad, my brother. So what is that? 3, something like that. I mean, whatever it is, my point being that if you can ascribe that level of significance to women in your own life, you should be able to pick that up and put it in a corporate context and in a partner context and a spouse context.
I love it. Shahira, he's talking about as well about being a girl dad, right? And I think we need to have a whole different podcast on girl dads because there's definitely an evolving world where it's beautiful to watch. It's so different to like 20, 30 years ago. You know, the parenting, it was mom did parenting and dad brought home the bacon, right? Like, and I love what you mentioned there, Mark. We have a saying in Ireland around your better half, and I hate the term because to your point exactly, it means that I've lost half myself. If I got married, I'm like, no, you're full. I'm a full person, and my partner is a full person. And as you said, exactly, it's about the two of you guys coming together to support each other equally, and hence being, twice as good together. And it's kind of a more of a multiple, right? Which is unique in many ways, but hopefully not too unique. So I'm hoping to find more relationships like this. Um, but Shahira, how do you feel like when you came together? You said you're married 11 years. You had a lot of change going on in your life professionally, as well as then, Mark talked about his sickness as well. And, you had a daughter. Give me some little bit there, like, because you had a pillar, but you were building the pillar a little bit at the same time as figuring out how does this all play through professionally. Was there a question mark of how do we do this where my career can take off? Was that even a question? Or did you always feel like Mark's going to support me?
No, absolutely. Nothing is perfect, right? Nothing is perfect. But we strive for perfection. So Mark and I, we were imperfectly perfect. We are imperfectly perfect.
Yeah.
But in the earlier stages, yes, first year marriage, we have, again, like he talked about our daughter, we have a son as well. So there's this blended family aspect that's taken place, newly married, new home. The transplant comes out of nowhere. I had to continue a hard career. Mark is in a whole other state. We're in Memphis, Tennessee. He's in DC
Ah,
getting the transplant. So we had to have a village. There's a support system there as well. But when it comes to Mark and I, how do I want to set this up? Us being on the same or not competing, we had to learn that. We had to learn that. It wasn't something that just happened. We had to learn how to do that. But the way we um, became non-competitive is first realizing that we're on the same team. So I want to correlate this a little bit to corporate world or business world. Mission matters. We had to understand what was our mission in our home, what's important. So it's the same thing on the corporate side. Men and women in leadership trying to share the same space, share the spotlight. Let's figure out, what are we working towards? Are we working towards the same thing? In our home, we had to figure out and learn we're working towards the same thing. We are both strong-willed in how we're going to get there. But what we learned really quickly was that, and I can't remember where this quote or idea came from, but think of it as a band. Sometimes you're the lead singer, sometimes you have to play the tambourine.
It's Chris Rock.
Chris Rock.
I was going to say it if she didn't say it. That's it, man.
Chris Rock. And I mean, it's trivial and probably silly, but it kind of blew our minds. As a team, sometimes he was the tambourine player. He had to be the cheerleader while I was up front. He was going through a transplant sickness. I had to travel from Memphis to DC, spend 2 weeks here and leave the kids home with our parents. Then a lot of things were going on. But when we realized that we're on the same team, our mission is the same, we're trying to get to the same place. And we can't get to the same place by pushing and we had to figure out, hey, it's narrow. Sometimes you're up front and I have to follow. Sometimes you may have to follow me on the things that I am good at. So we had to understand our roles, and sometimes the roles change. So I kind of reject the thought of having these gender identity roles where you're the primary in charge. No, we figure out what we're good at. What are our strengths and weaknesses? How can I rely on you? How can you rely on me? And I liken that to things in corporate. That's the only way we're going to see a shift in the professional world between men and women, if we lose the intimidation and figure out What are we trying to accomplish within this building, within this company, within this mission? How do we become a team? So that was pretty much the earlier stages of how we became that. And once we realized that and started working as a team, all I can say is it's been up from there. And yes, you always face challenges. But again, when you realize you're in lockstep, you can get through it.
I'm sharing this with Gottman afterwards. They're going to love this. Like an example of all of their research physically talking about it in profound ways. One thing I want to unpick there, you mentioned about community and it takes a village, right? And we hear that, we've heard that for many, many years. One of the challenges I find over the last, whatever, 10 years is that we've kind of been told women, you can do it all. And then there's an element of where women can feel the pressure to do it all, as well as, I suppose the guilt of not being able to do it all. And I feel like to your point there is it takes a village. So if you're on your own, it's impossible to do it all. I feel like it just is impossible. So we shouldn't put the pressure on some women or men to do or try to do it all, because it takes more than one person to be strong enough to go through all of the challenges that is growing a great career. That's a challenge on its own. Rearing a child, one child, two children, three, it's just amplified every time. So I think it's really important that we start to talk about it's possible to do it all only if all of the other support pillars are in place. And if they're not, be careful. Don't try to do it all. You end up being burnt out. You end up, you mentioned mental health, and as well, we have a mental health crisis because maybe we're trying to put too much pressure on ourselves to do it all. So give me a little bit there, because that community, that village you mentioned is so important. It's crucial. I think we need to be really honing that message again, for fear that we give too much pressure on women's shoulders going, you got to do it all because other women have done it all.
Yeah, and no, we cannot do it all. I actually reject that thought.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're 100% right. I will say again with a little bit of a personal touch. I am that person that always thought I could do it all. If I put my mind to it, I can do anything. Just move out of my way. That's how I operate now.
Yeah.
Worked for me, but guess what? It led me to a place of just honestly despair. And when I realized I cannot do it all, and I was so hard on myself. It didn't take other people being hard on me. I was hard on myself when I felt defeated that I couldn't do something. And I heard a friend of mine say today, you're juggling so many balls. If you drop one, what I think you heard it too. If you drop one ball, what is it?
I can't remember the exact.
Oh gosh, it was so profound.
Basically, the point is people only see what you drink.
Yeah, they only see what you drop. And as a woman, as a businesswoman, as a mother, as a wife, I began to feel that if I drop something, this is what you see. Me, I am the central of our household. Every day I woke up thinking about how does Mark feel today? How are the kids today? Oh my goodness, when I go to work, I have a team of over 100 people that's reporting up through a structure. How are they feeling today? And I was left feeling like, well, who's thinking about me? Now, initially, I didn't care. I can handle it. It doesn't matter.
Got this.
And one day it hit me. I realized, oh, it does matter. I dropped this ball, and everybody see this ball. I drop it. It was pretty defeating. Now, having a partner at home to tell me, hey, babe, you don't have to carry the burden by yourself. This goes back again to the point I made earlier when I realized that, handling that corporate executive job was a lot, and I needed to just take a mental break. I needed to start over, but it was him telling me that it's okay. You can do this. Let me handle this. Mark spent time getting up in the morning. He took both kids to school. He packed lunches. He picked them up. He took our daughter ice cream afterwards to make sure her feelings were okay. I mean, he took that burden off of me. So this also goes back to the point about sometimes you're the lead singer, sometimes you're playing the tambourine. He had to play the tambourine while I focused on what I was doing. But then on the flip side, I had to take a seat back and let him shine the things he needs to do. We moved to Nashville just 3 years ago, and it was because of his job, right? I wasn't ready for that. Nashville is totally different from where we come from. It's more expensive. You have all of these different elements that makes Nashville different. So that was going to be a change for myself, a change for the kids, just a big change. But because this was a career move for him, it was something that was going to help our family. It was something that just helps him as a man and everything that he's worked so hard to be. So when he got this opportunity, there were things that I had to take a step back and make sure that I am taken care of so that he can be successful and really focus on what he's doing. So we have found that happening. I mean, it happens back and forth. So being on the knowing that you're on the same team is such a big deal, and that is so helpful for that mental stress. So no, as a woman, we cannot do it all. We need men, and we know they need us. We need them. We need them just like that. So it's just one of those things.
Mark, have you ever heard that saying or the pressure that men can do it all?
I think for men, it's probably more. Now, personally, this is my personal experience, and hopefully some other men will relate to this. If we're being honest, if you have your wife works and has a corporate job or any kind of full-time job, she has to actually show up and be there, whether it's at home or there. They actually do have more burdens. I mean, just in my experience, and I'm sure other men will say this, like, during the day, like take the pandemic when your kids are in the house, the first person they're going to come to about a desire or I'm hungry or I don't have this,
Yeah.
typically the wife. Now I know that's not 100%, but that's still more prevalent. And so it's a lot of multitasking I think that women have to do that men don't have to do in the same way, which is also why I think that gives women an edge in a lot of forms of leadership because they're used to having to multitask with this different, like our daughter's different than our son, our son's different than me, you're in the middle of that. I think the experience of being able to be good at that is something that actually shows up as a superpower when you are working. Now that's the good side to it. The downside to it is that's a lot of different influences and pressures on one person. Men, I think probably more so than again using my experience as maybe like a framework for somebody else's. Men are probably more likely to say what I struggle with, I don't voice. You know what I mean? I'm going to keep that inside, and I don't necessarily feel like I need to talk about that. And that's tough too. But at the end of the day, I don't know that that's as tough as being the first person that people have to deal with in conjunction to also doing those things.
Yeah.
And then going back to something she said before about, how do you structure, how you help. There's been this concept lately in the last 10 years about self-care, and I got to take care of myself. And it's good on the one hand, but self-care is actually a substitute for someone not taking care of you. Meaning it shouldn't be the optimal thing. Like if you have to consistently always say, I gotta take care of myself because nobody else will. I gotta take some time for me because nobody else will. That's actually a poor substitute for somebody taking care of you. Now
Yeah.
it's a necessary one, but what you would rather have is if I devote myself to taking care of you and you devote yourself to taking care of me, I don't have to take care of myself so much. Because at the end of the day, you can only pull from yourself so much before you feel like you're exhausting yourself to even do self-care. So having that attitude of if I focus on her and she focuses on me, that this is an affirmation that you can't give yourself. And if you do that, and then if you kind of extrapolate it all the way out, like if you take care of the people that take care of you, things will take care of themselves, which again is an oversimplification. But the point being that you have to do that. And then the other thing too, to her point about the roles you're playing is, you I am the leading person, in my career, in my life. I gotta try to win an Oscar for that, like, best lead. But I also gotta try to win an Oscar for a best supporting role for her. You know what I mean? I gotta do both. I gotta chase both of those things with equal, fervor, because at the end of the day, she is going to gain more from that, and I'm going to gain more from that than if it's just, man, I get everything from myself. She gets everything from herself. And that's part of the partnership piece that it takes to actually make something like that work.
It's the first podcast I feel like crying one, so thanks, Mark. You're you're touching a
Don't
few
do it.
nerves
Yeah,
here.
yeah. I don't want to make that. I don't want
Don't
to make
do
that
it.
happen.
And I'm not a pretty crier, so let's not go down that route. But just on one thing you mentioned there, Mark, right? So we don't want to, as I said, pull men down or anything. We want people to excel and we want business, and especially in healthcare and health, we have so much more to do so we can prevent illness as well as treat better and treat equality and equity better and have more people around the world access what they need when they need it, where they need it at an affordable price, if at all. What would be your lessons for men who are looking at you going, I want to be, as successful as Mark in his career. And I'm looking at him going, right, I don't have a partner right now, early in my career or transitioning. What would be the lessons you would be saying to these professionals coming up behind you in order for them to go, I want to be Mark?
self self-awareness, like a critical form of self-awareness. If you don't have that, so you got to chase something. You know what I mean? Like you need to chase success in your career, but you also need to chase some sort of fulfillment around yourself and your own self-awareness. All of your growth comes out of recognizing, you know what, we need to contact Chris Rock. Chris Rock said something that I like was like the best thing ever. So you go through moments in your life. I'll give you a good one. When we first got married, we were in our early 30s. And early 30s is an interesting time for a career because you probably made just enough evidence of success to get a really good role,
Yeah.
but you're also not necessarily in a certain echelon of leadership where you don't have to keep that up and you're trying to prove yourself. It's kind of like this dual thing. I know what I'm doing, but I got to prove myself. And it compels you to do things that are probably a little bit unhealthy. Like I get home, I put the laptop in my lap, and I'm gonna work till 10:30. I fall asleep, get up, go to
Well done.
work. And there was a point in her career where probably our kids would probably say she had a laptop sitting on the couch. I had a laptop sitting on the couch, you
Yeah.
know. And to a degree, it is necessary, and you have to have a little bit of an edge at that time to keep that going. Where you're like, I gotta attack this now. Once you get out of that phase, do you still need to have that edge? Once you get to the point that you're like, all right, I've made it to a place where everybody knows what I'm capable of. I now have a degree of influence that people actually respect. Like I don't have to fight for that. Now you got to go back and fire that part of yourself that was working with that edge because in that position, it'll actually tank you. If you are walking around with a certain edge, when people recognize you as the leader, whatever your space is wrong. Now you need to have more of a smoothness about how I interact with people. I need to be calm because they're following my lead. But my point is, every so often as a man, you got to fire the person that you were for that period of time. So yeah, I needed to be the person that was moving with that edge in my early 30s. Now that I'm getting towards 40, I need to actually be like, I don't really need that version of myself. Like I'm gonna keep the good parts. Now I can move into this. I can actually lead through influence. When authority comes to me, it can pass through me. I don't have to hold on to it. I can. But my point to that is you have to reassess yourself maybe every 5 years and figure out, maybe I was in an offensive place where I felt like I had to throw every pass, score everything, and then maybe I built something that worked, and now I need to protect it. When I no longer need the offensive me, I need the defensive me. But the point is, it's really about really being critical of yourself and saying, do I need to continue to be the same person right now? If you do that, that tends to actually pair really well with having a wife and saying, what am I doing wrong and how do I need to develop? Because at the end of the day, I think what kind of sticks us together is both of us are chasing better versions of ourselves. But if she tells me, Mark, I don't like you doing this, well, if I've already been assessing myself anyway, it doesn't feel like this Herculean effort to hear what she's saying about what I need to do different.
I love it. Shahira, what about you? Looking at the women that are coming up along behind you, going, "Wow, your career has been amazing, professionally as well as personally. You've achieved like probably the gold status. Like if there is a premium level, you've gotten there. So, what are the lessons you would like to share for men and women looking at you and going, definitely that's where I want to be in for my career? What are the lessons?
I would say authenticity. Now, I know that's easier said than done,
Mhm.
but just being yourself. It's such a trivial statement, to be yourself. But one thing that I have learned, and I recently learned it. I'm going to say maybe 5 years ago, but earlier in my career, I didn't understand my voice. I didn't know how to project my voice. I
Mhm.
knew I had a voice, but I didn't know how to explain my voice. I didn't know how to display my voice because I'm nervous because I'm a woman. I'm nervous because I'm a woman of color. I'm also nervous because I'm typically at that time the youngest person in the room or close to the youngest person in the room. So I walked in every room thinking, what are they thinking about me?
Yeah.
Instead of me understanding my voice. And it kind of correlates with Mark with self-awareness. So sometimes as women, we are too self-aware to where we project that onto other people or defeat ourselves before giving ourselves an opportunity. We tend to do that definitely in the workforce, and we do it at home as well. We shrink under our men, we shrink under our men at work. So really learning my voice. So I went through this iteration of what is my voice? Okay, now I know my voice. How do I display my voice? Okay, now I'm displaying my voice. Now, how do I tone it? How do I find the right balance so that I'm not overbearing or underbearing? And then you get to the place Mark talked about once you get over that, 40 mark, now you're trying to figure out, okay, my voice is out there. People understand who I am. They know what I'm about. Now I have to start thinking about how to use that voice in terms of when I'm in rooms with men from a corporate standpoint. I work with a lot of CEOs. I work with a lot of people from the board levels and such and executives. And also having a husband at home who's a leader as well. So now that becomes, I have this voice. I know my voice is amazing. I feel powerful with my voice, but is this something that needs to be said, right? Does it need to be said by me? Okay, yes, it may need to be said by me. Does it need to be said now or later? Just kind of figuring out how to use that voice
Yeah.
and ensure that when I do use my voice, I am communicating. And I use communicating in air quotes because people think communicating is about what I say, how you talk, but communicating is about if the person you're talking to really understands what you're saying. Did you get your point to that person, across to that person? So it's really how to use my voice such that it is leveraged, it is understood, and I'm actually meeting the goal that I'm trying to meet. So I went through all of those kind of iterations as a woman, and also being a better listener. Because as a woman, once you find your voice, you feel like I need to be heard. I need to say what I need to say so that you know who I am. But you have to become a really, really good listener at the same time and not so much of a talker. So I had to pull all of those things together to become a better version of myself and use and be self-aware in various situations.
You both touched on EQ there more than anything, right? Emotional intelligence is just it's powerful at home and in the workplace, and it's unique. Communication, obviously, you touched on both a lot there. Have you found yourself over the years walking through scenarios like together where you're like, I'm having this experience. Am I seeing it in the right way? Because to your point is maybe we're too sensitive or too aware and we're projecting potentially biases and stereotypes because again, that's the way our mind works. We're all got unconscious bias, and we have some conscious bias. So do you find yourself doing that where you still have that like, am I mad? Is this suitable or appropriate or what should I be doing? What do you think?
Going back to like, the self-awareness and kind of, it changes in some circumstances. The listening part is really key though. And that even relates to the question you asked about, men and how, maybe maybe they're single for now, or maybe they do have a wife and they're trying to figure things out early. the listening thing is really big because, we got to a point to where you have to, like, she knows what my proclivities and flaws are. And generally, whatever your strength is, your weakness is just the other side of the strength, so you can, strength, a weakness most of the time is a misapplied strength, especially for men. So, a good example of that is, I'm good at, I am a forward thinker. I am always kind of thinking ahead. I'm always thinking maybe even a few months ahead, but that also causes me to miss moments. You know what I mean? Like she's much better at recognizing, we're in a moment here, and this moment requires this. And if it's up to me, I miss almost all of those. But the truth of that is that the strength I have about looking forward is literally blinding me to right now. This is what this person needs. That person, everything can't be about delayed gratification. Sometimes things got to be about I need the response right now. This was the right thing or this wasn't. And I'll miss that. So it leads you to these things where you're like, is it, is how do I assess my intent versus my impact? You can't rely on, well, I intended for this to happen. Well, no, how did it impact when it landed? Then the other piece of that is, how do I respond to something instead of react to something? You know, and what you just talked about when you talked about, how do we go back and forth? We have gotten good over time at understanding, well, this is what my wife's strength is, but this is also where she may be not seeing it. This is where my husband's strength is, but this is where he might not be seeing it. So you can always go back to, I hear that was your intent, but how did it impact? I hear that was, how you felt, but was that a reaction or was that a response? And so, but that's years of that. You cannot like rush that. You know what I mean? That's something that you have to develop, over time. But if
Yeah.
you can be mindful of this, what you're trying to develop, it can actually work out.
I 100% agree with that. Mark and I have become thought partners. More so, even from a business standpoint, he'll come home and say, "Hey, this happened today. Tell me, am I thinking about this correctly?" So even when he's working with different women in leadership, this is what she said, or this is how it came off. Translate that, and I'll give him a thought process, and I have to do the same thing when it comes to men or women. I mean, we do it regardless of the genders, but we use that thought partnership and play it off of each other, even in the home, about things that happen in the professional setting to help balance what's going on. So I just wanted to add that part about the
last conclusion to that statement too is that you also got to know sometimes it's not time to talk about anything work related whatsoever. You know what I mean? And like, don't even bring that into the moment if you can. Like I think now we've gotten good at is picking our spots. Like I'm, both of us have enough work to call a certain level of anxiety or stress as it is. And we are much better thoughtfully about, hey, I need you to help me with this thing, like kind of being specific about what we need, but then not also, bringing home your anxiety and putting it on somebody that already has work anxiety in such a way that it's like, man, I just got home from work, or you just, and now that you're telling me about this stressful day, it's more like, help me think about this instead of let me just dump, all of these things on you. But that's a self-awareness thing too.
I absolutely love it. What's the last thing that I want to get you guys, because we're going to have you back. I've got to do a whole girl dad series, because I think there's a whole lot to unpick there. We haven't mentioned the word masculinity and femininity, energy, and all that stuff, because I don't think we're talking about it properly. So that's a whole different podcast that we won't even get into. Because even defining what a man is and what a woman is, I mean, likewise, I think we have a very interesting conversation happening right now that needs a thorough unpicking. But you guys have landed on so many messages and so many learnings, and I'm jealous as well. I feel like giving you both a hug. So you're gonna hug each other afterwards for me, because I want to share some of this energy. I love it, absolutely love it. Between emotional intelligence, between leadership, between learning over the years, bouncing things off each other, thought leadership, thought partners. Um, there's so many of us that don't have what you guys have, and I can understand it's not just a doubling of partner support. It's a 10x. It's a massive multiple that you guys have both seen professionally and personally. You're both your kids are so lucky, I think, to be experiencing and witnessing this healthy relationship as well as healthy professional development at the same time. So again, hats off and jealous there. And I'm coming to Nashville. I'm definitely coming to Nashville. As an Irish person, I pretend I can dance. I pretend I can sing. Nashville is definitely going to be on my list
Yeah.
for 2025.
Yeah, wait time here.
You have a great time. We promise.
20 pubs, bars, all of that. Yeah.
I'm in. But before we wrap up, one last thing is part of this was about amplifying great females across industry and across the world. And you guys have been phenomenal. And Shahira, you've been amazing to work with. And as we've gotten to know each other over the last year, it's been phenomenal to get to know you. And I'm just privileged and I look forward to working with you more and more and more. But call out some other leaders for me. Give me some of the other leaders who need to be spotlighted that we are kind of saying also doing amazing work. And I want to make sure that I'm connecting the dots between more and more amazing people in order to help drive change in the world for better healthcare, better health, better gender balance, better leadership, and the world better overall. So tell me, who are the emerging leaders and the established leaders we should also be well aware of?
You know, there's one that comes to mind so strong, and her name is Jess Thompson. Jess is the founder and CEO of Clinical Research Project Managers Association. I wanted to get that right. So, yes, she founded this organization, I believe, about 3 years ago. But what draws me so much to Jess is she's a young woman, and she was very successful. Well, she is very successful, but her journey, she shared her journey from day one till today. She spent the first 2 years of that journey doing highlight reels and what's so wonderful about being an entrepreneur and all of the traveling, all the great stuff. And she hit a wall. But when she hit that wall, she didn't stop sharing her journey. So over the past year, we've watched her continue to build her business, but we've also watched her evolve. Well, first of all, devolve and then evolve again from the pitfalls of being a founder, those things that are not so great. And I applaud her so much for showcasing the vulnerability, for showcasing the times that she almost quit, and showcasing a time where she did quit for a second. But she wanted to show as a woman, and she just did it so transparently. And I think it was so brave of her to do that because as a founder, you really don't want people to see those pitfalls so much because you're afraid. How does that reflect on me? Am I not a good CEO? Did I not make the right steps or things like that? But her showcasing it gave me so much strength. And there were times where I hit walls where I can come to Mark and say, Mark, I've hit a wall, and Mark can give me all the love and encouragement. But it was something different about seeing another woman going through it and her sharing her journey and the strength that she was able to give to a lot of women watching her. That meant so much. I want to highlight her. She's become a great friend. She supported me, and I didn't even know she was going through tough times, but she's supporting my journey. So I just really want to give a shout out to Jess Thompson.
Jess sounds like an amazing woman. I'm already excited to connect with Jess. Fantastic. Mark, who would you like to call out?
I'll probably name a few and be a little briefer, but because I can't think of just one. I'm thinking about people that my wife and I know in common, though. Natalie Cooper, who's the president and CEO of WellPoint. We talk about bringing an authentic leadership style and also being very community oriented. She leads one of the three largest insurance companies in Tennessee. It's more of a peer of ours, very established. If I want to think like for a mentor from my perspective, Wanda Lau is another. Wanda was the president of UBS here in Nashville. She's retired on several boards here. Very powerful person, but like the epitome of power flows through her from an influence standpoint, and not just to her. And she's opened up a lot of doors for me, and not only opened up the doors for me, I actually walk, like, not just Mark, go here, Mark, I'll come with you, you know. And I've told her several times that she's given me my model for if I'm blessed enough to reach the retirement age and the retirement part of my career, for how I would like to reflect that. Katina Beard is another one, the CEO of Matthew Walker Comprehensive Health Center here. Just a great thought partner, really strong leader, someone I think of and admire much. And then probably the last one I would say, probably Laurel Gracie and Dee Patel. Laurel is over the Federal Reserve Bank here in Nashville, and Dee leads probably the most prestigious hotel here. So anyway, I go on and on. The reason why I want to say that is because there is no lack of great women leadership. It's just maybe a failure to recognize it.
I love it. And that's exactly this. It's the spotlight, right? It's because often just doing the job, getting on with it, head down and powering through. But can't see, can't be is a campaign over the side of the world. Whereas like a lot of girls, if they don't see someone in that role, they don't see they can do it until they see someone in it. So the more we spotlight, I think that the better. I'm also a big believer that we're in a different era. I think many of the stereotype might have been that women stepped on each other to get up the ladder because there was only one allowed up. Whereas if we create gender balance, it's about support and it's about working together as human beings, regardless of gender, and regardless of, ethnicity and skin color and desires and qualifications. And the more we can do this together, then the more balance we get to, and it's a win-win-win. So it is really important, I think, that we do build this coalition and this support and this collective in order to work together. So spotlighting some amazing leaders is phenomenally powerful and impactful. And hopefully I can connect with all of them because they sound amazing, absolutely amazing leaders. So guys, thank you so much. It has been an absolute privilege. I can't wait to go cuddle you in person in Nashville. First dance is on me. We will definitely do something in Nashville. You guys can pick the genre. Again, thank you. Appreciate you were absolutely amazing, and I will be over to you guys soon. But thank you. I'm going to be wrapping this up. We're going to share this. I can't wait for other couples, as well as partners, as well as single people, as well as leaders across the world going, this is what great looks like. And the Gottman Institute and their research, you literally have just talked it through us in practical terms. So an absolute pleasure. So it has been an absolute pleasure, and I can't wait for this to be shared and for us to be able to amplify this message to so many more. So thank you.
Thank you, Gracie. It's been a pleasure for us. This has been very fun, and thank you for giving us this platform to talk. And we actually commend you. We applaud you for what you're doing and stepping up and creating this atmosphere. So this is wonderful. And when you approached me to do this, the answer was 100% yes. And when I said, Mark, hey, we got this opportunity, I'm telling you, he said, yeah, let's do it.
Brilliant.
So thank you.
It's powerful. We'll all work together. We'll get to a better place.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for listening. You can connect the dots with others by sharing this podcast with colleagues and teammates. At wearethecollective.world, you can join a professional network, avail of professional development, and engage your support team. We collaborate on the shared pursuit for gender balance in health and business. Until next time, keep connecting the dots.